Welcome to the Climate Hive webcast, What Do You Solve? Where climate innovation stories come alive. Here with our co-founder, Mike Higgins, aka Higo, and I am Kevin Drolet, aka Kdro. And we're super excited to speak with the team from Black Teal Energy. And Black Teal Energy specializes in creating solutions that extend the life and improve the efficiency of energy storage systems. And as a NexGen OEM, they deliver future-proof, adaptable solutions designed to meet the evolving needs of energy storage systems. They offer the industry's first universal AI-powered battery management system, BMS, designed to be a backward, compatible, and flexible across various energy storage systems, regardless of chemistry. So we can't wait to learn more about you, and I'm going to pass the mic to Mike.
Yeah, here you go.
Higo, sorry. I already screwed up.
So as we all know, like everything is a business, right? And a business solves unique problems that are recognized by the founders, where they come together and say, there's a vacuum in this marketplace and we recognize it and let's do something about it. And certainly your business is no exception to that. So we wanted to ask you, what problem do you solve?
My name's Derek. I'm one of the co-founders of Black Teal Energy. I'm currently the chief business officer, and I help determine what market strategy we should approach and build partnerships around that. I guess really the problem of longevity in the energy storage space is the problem that we address. How we came to be with that, it started from my background's been in energy storage for the past 8 years. I started on 7-Elevens turning wrenches on EV chargers, actually, in San Diego. And that the industry quickly grew, and we had sites all over California. So I was very proud to be part of bringing energy storage to California's markets to pair with solar systems. And as time went on, contracts got bigger and the scale of the problems got bigger. I helped develop sites around the globe. But one thing that I started seeing as I progressed from being a field member to more in the sales division where I was helping form contracts was that bankability was solved for on a corporate standpoint, on a parent company standpoint, and that technology had yet to catch up. But in the contracts, it was promised and it was written inside of these contracts that future problems such as augmentation or product warranties, they ended after 5 years, but they were the developers and utilities were still signing up for a 20-year power purchase agreement. So we have this big gap between the product and technology, which lasts 5 years and is guaranteed by the manufacturers for 5 years, and these 20-year power purchase agreements. And so Black Teal was formed in order to address this problem of how do we keep these systems online? And those systems and the EV chargers I was telling you about that were supposed to be guaranteed for 10 years were ripped out in about year 5 or 6, all of them. So Black Teal Energy is really formed to address, how do we solve the gap? How do we bring bankability from the commercial end to the technological end? And we started with the universal battery management system and controls.
Wow, you were uniquely positioned to see that, because that's something else where you're guaranteed for 5 years, but the contracts are for 20. I mean, that gap is stunning. That's, 3 times the length of the warranty period. So you see this problem, you assemble with other co-founders, and you guys decide this is a problem you can tackle. This is a problem you can solve. Why don't you dive into an example of how specifically, you're doing that? Like this will get a little bit into the real heart of the solution now that you've identified the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a big circularity question inside of batteries. What happens at their end of life? Where do they go? Are they still useful? Can they be recycled? And inside of that value chain from installation to regathering the materials back into the market, one very unique area that we looked at, I think what we started with is what I mentioned is the universal battery management system. Essentially, it's a computer chip that gathers sensor data, temperature, voltage, and has algorithms inside of it. But what we wanted to do was essentially upgrade systems that make it backwards, essentially with any chemistry, any form factor, as the batteries change, as the chemistries change, as things get updated, that our system would still be compatible with any forms of the past and be able to help provide the replacements for the future. So a very specific area that we apply this is actually, and it's a burgeoning industry, which we see as remanufacturing. And there's a few companies out there that have used our battery management system against multiple types of cells, types of chemistries, types of forms, golf cart batteries, energy storage systems, old forklift batteries, and they put our battery management system on top of it. And now it can control and see all these different parts and different systems. Usually what the industry is using is a very specific battery management system for that application. But in the remanufacturing process, in the warranty process, and the updating of the new applications, they need a new battery management system, which is ours, to do so.
What would you say, and anybody can answer this question, but what are some of the biggest roadblocks for a company like Black Teal Energy? Like what are the challenges you face as you wade into the market, and what do you feel like really differentiates you guys?
Scott, you want to take that on?
Yeah, yes, I can take it on, and I'll actually link in the previous questions too. So, hi, I'm Scott Daniels. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Black Teal Energy. I have over 25 years experience in batteries and energy storage, and my main responsibilities are innovation and bringing product to market. In the industry, energy storage, UPSs, they originated with a lead acid battery system, with very simple batteries. And I call it the lead acid mindset, because how many flavors of lead acid is there? There's probably 3 or 4 majors, and then there's some anomalies. But in lithium ion, it's not all about just chemistry. It's how the systems are designed, what they're designed to meet in the requirements. And when you have customers, they are already grappling with a very complex system. And then you come with a new approach. Even though our approach is simplified and it helps them, a lot of people are adverse to change. And I call that the lead acid mindset, because you add in something else that may seem more complex, but it's not. You get that apprehension. One of the things that we do, and that really helps overcome some of these barriers or obstacles, is to actually show that transparency. That's one of the key things that the Universal BMS and the Universal BMS with AI will provide, is that you get supply chain accountability. Because a lot of these things in advanced batteries, if they're lasting 15 years or 10 years, it's hard to characterize those batteries to guarantee that they'll last that long, just like Derek alluded to earlier. So with the system that we've implemented and are implementing in the future, we will be able to characterize the batteries in real time, not just relying on manufacturers' data. And then we could form actual real baselines on performance and warranties, so we can be more effective, more accountable, and more transparent. And I think that's what overcomes those barriers, but those barriers still exist. Every customer will be treated uniquely and with empathy, because we have to be slow. We have to educate. It's a consultative sales approach.
I'm James Lang, head of marketing here, just fundamentally trying to think through the story of what we're doing. And Derek, like he alluded to, has a unique perspective on the market, and being a founder, being there on the field, witnessing this stuff being implemented and then torn out. And there's this idea that batteries are the solution to sustainability, and people are trying to do the right thing. But I think that there's an underlying fundamental ignorance towards like longevity. And I think that having the approach of sustainability through longevity and being able to supply people with solutions, to not be afraid of that as being a solution to the problems that they're facing. I think that there's this, along with this education idea, I think that what happens in a lot of these situations is that there is a sort of demon on the back. I call it like a floating to-do. It's my least favorite thing on the whole planet, but it's this idea that you have somebody asks you something. I ask Mike, hey, Mike, do this thing. And then the call ends. And he's like, oh, man, I don't remember what James asked me to do, but I know that it's going to come up at some point, and I'm going to be, like, yeah, it's good. It's not going to be good. So I think that this happens a lot in the energy storage industry, where it's like, invest in energy storage, implement it. Let's set up a site. Let's do all of this stuff. And then you talk to finance guys and they're like, oh yeah, I financed that site. And I'm like, what do you look for as far as like a return term? And they go 7 or 8 years. Now, with what we talked about earlier, that's exactly in line with the degradation timeline. So it's a trickle down system where you have this massive problem of people actually not recognizing that batteries have the opportunity to be a sustainable solution. And it can actually come from even investors saying, oh, wait, I actually have power to pull the sustainable option for the assets that I own, et cetera, right? And it's this whole thing of like, you have these floating to-dos. You have this 8-year timeline that you're kind of ignoring. And now in essence, it comes to education of how can we educate people to understand that the solution is actually an easy and a transparent and a readily adoptable one for those systems. So that sustainability in longevity is actually going to be the answer to what we're trying to deal with here, right? So
I'd like to address one more thing on the obstacles. In this whole industry, it's still very fragmented. It's still very uncertain. There's still a lot of risk. And what we do, and our goal is to de-risk investments for all the stakeholders, not just the financial investors, the owners, operators, the folks that service these systems. Our goals are to improve safety, performance, etc. But we have to look back on ourselves and what do we do as a company that gives us a sustainable competitive advantage? And that's with the people that we hire, the culture we build, and also our continual innovation. We really foster innovation across the board. No idea is a bad idea. And we never use the trash can theory. We don't look at things saying fail fast and fail often and pivot. No, what we do is we work and we shelve the idea and we pull it back when we have the resources and when the market's ready for it. So we're going to continually improve our products and services. This is a sustainable thing. We are in a sustainable industry, and we're trying to revolutionize it both in a cultural and a technological approach.
So one thing I want to add on that is like this industry is really fascinating to me. I mean, James mentioned it, Scott mentioned it. Like it is really an educational standpoint of like how do we teach people to understand, right? Like a lot of our incentives, like if you think 7, 8 years ago or 6 years ago even, what we're trying to do is like very much in the moment. Salespeople are trying to make the sale for that moment, right? For that year, for that quarter, to make the quarterly report for whatever company targets that they have to hit that year, right? They're not thinking 6 years from then. And so as the industry matures and there's a lot of assets and there's assets that are not working or performing to the guarantees, and then the pain starts coming, that's the point at which people will start educating themselves what else is out there. And we're starting to see it as return customers are seeing their systems not online. It's affecting the reputation of these big companies that have provided these systems. But as exponential as we're growing now, 6 to 7 years from now, we'll have that same problem just exponentially larger. And so what BTE is uniquely positioning themselves to do, in my opinion, is align themselves with the end customer. From very much design thinking from the very beginning to the end customer, which is really cares about price and uptime. Like now we have technology along the whole way that's pre-thought inside of the system, not to last 4 or 5 years for the next sale, right? But to really last the entire lifetime of the system. And the future thoughts inside, I think that the industry is going to head towards is, interesting thoughts as energy as a service, batteries as a service. Like these are future things that BTE's technology really is aligned in itself, that at the end of the day, the customer is you and me with the lights on right now, the computers with the lights on right now, and we care about the price at which we pay and that fact that it's up, right? And the uptime and availability. And so that's what our technology helps guarantee through that whole chain and helps, I think, over time, the brands that do align with the technology that is compatible, reliable, and long lasting are going to be the winners.
And just to add another comment to that, the industry is starting to resell projects. We have these projects that have 20-year performance guarantees, even approaching 25 years. After 5 years, some of these projects are being resold, kind of like a mortgage. But as batteries age, the risk increases, especially with legacy battery management systems, where you're not seeing the history, the accountability, and the true performance at a granular level, which is the building block at the cell and already progressing through the pack, rack, and systems. And I say systems in plural, these are very large projects. So when we think about the end user, whether it's the end owner or the person with the NIMBY effect that happens to have a home near an energy storage project, or the people that rely on the energy from that energy storage project, when you have a reseller and you have a project switching hands, that person or that entity is burdened with that accelerator increased risk. So by providing that transparency and also providing the technologies for augmentation and other things, we are de-risking every single stakeholder in the value chain.
What difference does it make if they engage you at the beginning of a project, if they engage you at the middle of a project, if they engage you at the end? And like, how does that work? Because it seems like there's such variation. Some batteries are coming online and they got a plan for it, including financially. Some batteries have been online and maybe they're degrading already. Can you still serve them? Like, what does that landscape look like?
Well, this question's addressed to me because I have to get a better understanding of the question. So I understand the majority of it, but when you think about the age of projects or the age of the technology that's aligned with those projects, are you talking about how BTE addresses different timelines within the value chain and the projects? Are we talking about how we can add value to those customers that might have systems that are aged or systems that they're considering that are new?
How does a company like Black Teal Energy enter into a complicated landscape and not be like, I'm going to be all things to all people? Like, how do you do that as a company? Like, how does that work? Like,
I'm going to say it the way, and it's not canned, but I've answered this question before. And it's the same approach as if you were to invest in a company. What do you invest in? Do you invest in the technology, the product, or do you invest in the people? And it's really the people of BTE that gives us accessibility. It's our networks, it's our proven track record, and it's our continual innovation. So when we look at whether a project's new, whether we're working and partnering with an integrator, or we're working with an EV supplier, you name it, it's that we work hand in hand. It's an alliance with our customers. It's not a transactional business here. We are developing relationships. Every time we engage with a customer, it's like engagement management. We're just developing that trust. We're reinforcing the trust, and we're making sure that anything that we have on our roadmap is going to satisfy the needs and the requirements of our customers. So when we think about batteries, and going back to history, we literally had a question internally. I think it was raised by our COO when he was in Italy, and he had a question of who invented the battery. And I was joking around with him because in some terms, if you ask ChatGPT, what's the oldest battery? Well, in our world, it's our world, right? Earth is a battery. We're all individual batteries, and we just look at it. The technology is always going to innovate, improve, advance, sometimes maybe even take a step back. So when we look at this, we're looking at how we can come up with a solution, design, innovate, manufacture, streamline, but the goal is to add the most value as possible to our customers. And that includes every stakeholder. So going back to if we had a project that needed augmentation and it was 10 years old, we were developing components that are actually backwards compatible, where that energy storage system could actually have a new module, but when it's plugged into that system, it thinks it's an older module, the one that was defective or the one that was aged. So we're being as flexible as we can. The analogy our CEO used when he was coming up with this concept is when you have a car part that fails, such as an alternator, you can go to a car parts store and buy an aftermarket OEM replacement, but you can't really do that with batteries. So we are going to be the first a company to offer those solutions, because you don't want to have to replace a whole container or redo a whole project because of a defective battery, or just a battery that the system might not have been optimally designed. There's a lot of challenges in batteries. I could talk about this for days, and Derek and James know that I have a habit of not stopping when it comes to talking. So I'm going to leave it there, but I want my other colleagues to speak and have their turn.
Yeah, I'll chip in right here. So Kevin, I think the premise of your question is, how do you not be all things to all industries or segments or anything? And I think what we are trying to do, at least the start, is to be the standard in controls, at least the way controls should be designed. And so whatever markets that creative people will apply our technology to, that's up to them, right? The battery goes into a flashlight, it goes into our cell phones, a laptop, a car, it goes into you name it, right? Lots of different things, right? It's still a battery at the end of the day, right? So for us, it's our control systems that can apply to many different markets as it needs to be seen fit. So we call it second life markets, for instance, remanufacturing, augmentation as a different market, new controls as well. It doesn't matter. Ultimately, the value and the premise that we're giving to this industry, this idea of flexibility and longevity, so that it cuts down timelines, it cuts down costs, and it creates a standard for this industry that people can trust. I think that's what we're selling ultimately.
I wanted to get into a case study, right? Where we talk about an engagement, because it's always most interesting when you take it from the perspective of, there was a current state and then there's a future state, right? We intersected this business at this time, and then this problem, and then, this is what the future of this will look like, but I'm sitting here thinking, man, I think maybe we had covered that if, you know, I'm like, I don't know if we need to cover it again, but maybe we do. Maybe there's a case study, Scott, that right on the tip of your tongue, you're like, oh no, there's a story I want to tell about how we, deployed all this technology to help a real business solve a real problem.
Yeah, it comes in the line of, I hear it a lot from all the places I've worked. I've been in energy storage for about 25 years, and everybody wants the industry to be a commodity. It's easier to digest. It goes back to the simple mindset. I'm not saying people are simpletons. It's just that we want to keep things simple, right? It's that KISS methodology. But with the complexity of these advanced technologies, they're not going to be commoditized. We want them to be. But we are doing with our control systems that Derek talked about is that we are doing our best to commoditize them, where you have a technology where you don't have to be, it doesn't have to be a mystery box, right? You're going to get full transparency and vision into the system and how it's performing so that you can have a better understanding. Because the biggest de-risking effort is education. It's, hey, I know what's going on. It's not like I'm getting in my car and it's making a weird noise. What do I do? Everybody talks about working on older cars because they were simple. Now, as battery systems continue to progress, they're going to become more and more complex. It's almost like entropy, right? But what our system does is actually organizes those disorganized systems so that we can digest them and comprehend them.
Right. And Mike, I think to specifically to a case study, for instance, like we have a customer that's interested today. The end customer is an IOU. It's an investor-owned utility, small utility. But their goal is to see how they can reduce the impact of batteries and essentially climate impact for the city by using second life batteries. And what they care about is kilowatts and kilowatt hours, essentially power and energy capacity, right? So how much can you guarantee as energy and power coming into the grid at certain times? And so this is what was mentioned before is batteries as service, energy as service. That's what the end customer cares about. So then they go flip that to you and me and all that, right? So that's what they're caring about. And this remanufacturer has a lot of what someone's trash and going to recycling would cost them money to recycle, which is these golf cart batteries, for instance, lithium golf cart batteries. They're looking to reintegrate them into providing the kilowatts and kilowatt hours. Now, the energy density required from the golf cart system now is a lot less because it's energy storage. It's sitting on the side of a commercial industrial building. And now, in this case, they're saying, okay, we have this thing which was once a liability, right? Someone just wanted to give it away to me. I took it. Now I put BTE's universal battery management system on it. In the future, it'll be with AI, so it's even more reliable and safer and more cyber secure. But right now, they just put it on top of all these golf cart batteries, and then they supply kilowatts and kilowatt hours. Like that's one case of what if it's not golf cart batteries? What if forklift batteries? What if it's car batteries? What if it's any batteries? Like we don't care. That's what we're trying to get to, and that's the future. We don't care. You get kilowatts, you get kilowatt hours.
And can I add a little bit more to that concept? And it's a real story and a funny story. I was working with one of the major automotive companies, not at when I was at Black Teal Energy, and it was about second life on the vehicle batteries. And this is about 10 years ago. And after a while, I made a comment. It was to the executives, and I was like, I don't want to be the trash can for your used batteries, because that was the mindset that I had.
Yeah.
But with the Universal BMS and AI, it's no longer a trash can of batteries, because we can really see and use that value. There's a lot of extractable value left in second life batteries. The question is, how do you maintain them? How do you manage them? And how do you characterize them and make sure and ensure that things are safe? And now we can do that, but before we couldn't. So I always repeat that joke, because I think of it as a joke with the trash can of old batteries. But I've changed, and but we all get set in our ways.
But it sounds like such a logical solution, right? Incorporating the circular economy of these batteries to,
It
be able to extend them and continue to use them, as opposed to tearing them apart, extracting the minerals that are still of value and throwing the rest away.
it's logical from the high level, but it's extremely challenging to actually implement. And otherwise, it would have been done a long time ago, right? And but then doing the easy things don't really yield value. So when we think about batteries life, when you look at energy and power, and it depends whether it's a power application or energy application, you have to understand the requirements of what the battery is going to be used for, and then the battery's designed for specifications. But the real value of a battery is typically the area under the curve when it's cycling and through its time. So a lot of the industry will say, hey, we want to have this battery cycle once a day, and you have a particular capacity of that system, and that capacity will degrade over time. How fast that capacity degrades, different batteries exhibit different behaviors and degradation. And what we're doing and how we're approaching this is through artificial intelligence to learn about that degradation in real time and adjust the performance or the characteristics of the battery so that we can extract the most value out of that system over its life.
Right. And to tie to that, I think the question that maybe Mike, you're alluding to, I'm sorry, Higo, you're alluding to in this whole thing is like, why hasn't it been done before? And I don't get me wrong, there's challenges to coming to this market. As Scott was saying, it's not easy. There's things in Second Life that, technology improves over time. And so there are risks that we need to mitigate. And we do think, we are one part of the solution, but there's risks in the history of the batteries, fire safety. There's a lot of other risks that are counter to underwriting of, well, I can just get a new battery that has the latest manufacturing, that has the latest chemistry, the latest technology, and then versus this older battery, right? And how do I know how long it's going to last? And then the other forces on this are market forces, economic forces. Why would any of the new manufacturers want competition that drops the price to their new batteries? So they want you to promote new. They're only going to be incentivized to promote new, and then they're going to overemphasize, in my opinion, the risks associated with it. Now, they're not anything small to think of. Fire safety is a really big deal with lithium batteries, but again, these are two major things at play as we think about this industry growing as a whole. How do we balance, the incentives of the new market, the prices of the new market with the existence of these batteries? And then, sorry, one last point on top of that is geographically, it's a challenge. Like the cost of obtaining, accumulating, and moving batteries is a big challenge as well. So those are just one market. That's why we play all of them, because we don't care essentially if it's new or old. We're just saying, I think most important emphasis of remanufacturing is that our battery is compatible. We think the bigger markets that we're addressing is really around domestic content and this new battery system. But what we've helped do with, especially with the new companies and new manufacturing companies, is that they have to rebuild an entire battery management system for their specific form factor every single time. It's a 40 to 52 week lead time, if not longer, right? They have to find new parts, they have to source new parts every single time. So what we've done to get ahead is this is the backwards compatibles where we spent a lot of this time, but the forwards future proof, we're good. You have a new battery system, we're in compliance, just plug it in. And I think that's where this market will go, and we want to align with the manufacturers to do so. So, lots of ways, but I think I'd like to reduce the story that, we're only remanufacturing. That's how flexible we are. Any of the old stuff, but any of the new stuff too.
Yeah. Just to add another comment real quick, Higo, that batteries have two perishabilities. One is a perishability of the technology, and the other is a perishability of the battery itself. When the battery cell is manufactured, the clock starts ticking. It's like when we were born. And whether it's sitting there not being used on idle, that's called calendar life. And if you're using it, it's called cycle life. But at the same time, the technology perishability, when battery manufacturers from the cell level produce a battery, how long do you think that particular cell's in production for? Roughly 2-3 years. And there's a couple challenges with that. One is that there's not a lot of data when you have new models coming out all the time. The cost that you incur when you characterize batteries, especially large format, is very prohibitive. And then on top of that, you are, sorry, just a sec. With our technology and our approach is that you can characterize the batteries while they're being used. But if you combine the perishability of both the technology and the battery itself, that creates a big challenge that we're addressing. I hope that makes sense. I had a pause there.
Yeah, no, it does. Actually, it's interesting to think about like the analogy of like Apple, right? Like Derek was Apple phones, right? Like so my battery in my phone is dying. So it's like, okay, what's my choice? I gotta go get like I guess another phone at a certain point. I'm gonna go as long, but every time I plug it in, it's like, it's already at 60%, it just is going. And I could see that for manufacturers, like in some ways they want you to buy another phone, like that's on their balance sheet. They from economics, it's like, but it's also the throwaway society or the throwaway economy where it's like we make something, we use it, we throw it away, and that's not sustainable long term. And to get longer life out of batteries, so I think it's an interesting thing to think about. Like, okay, so and I'm partially what I'm saying is what I'm understanding what Black Teal Energy does is that on the backside of things, you have these golf cart batteries, and they have to be repurposed, and they have to be repurposed to serve the function of providing power and and capacity of power, the output. And then you have new OEMs, but they have a different kind of challenge, right? Like they're coming out with a battery, and if they're in production for 3 years, is the battery still already kind of taken a hit in those 3 years before they even ever get sold? It's already the degradation process is started. So how do you safeguard those assets? But am I kind of characterizing it correctly? Is that
you are actually? I wanted to address it because you brought up a great analogy. So with understanding the application, I call it a voice of application, and talking about the phone. It's compared to stationary storage, compared to maybe an EV or a golf cart. How long are you going to own your phone for? How long is your phone contract for? And it's just like we talked about power purchase agreements and performance guarantees. Typically, people use the phone and own it for 2 years. So what are you really asking from the battery that's in that phone? And if you cycle it every day, you're probably not cycling 100% depth of discharge, and you plug it in every night. Some people cycle it more than once a day because they're watching a lot of videos and doing gaming, you name it. But in essence, to have a battery in a phone that lasts for that 2-year technology perishability is quite easily achievable. But when you come to stationary systems, that's now a 20-year. So you're now having a battery that's cycling every day, plus you have that calendar life, which has to go for 20 years. Completely different beast. So it's understanding those requirements. I think you hit the nail on the head with the phone analogy. It's that technology, a golf cart. How long will that battery be designed to last for a golf cart? How long will a golf cart last for? And another thing that's happening in UPS land, when we were with lead acid batteries, I worked for a UPS company in the past. It's the batteries, you would have replacement cycles every 2 to 5 years for lead acid batteries. But now the batteries can last longer than the UPS, because a UPS product would typically, based off the technology perishability, 7 to 10 years. We can achieve that now. And then on top of that, to have battery management systems that learn from each other and to grow and increase the performance. Going back to your phone, you notice that some Samsung phones and other brands you have the option to limit the charge on that battery, because certain battery chemistries will age faster at a higher state of charge. So by only charging to 80%, you can increase the life of your battery, but you're leaving energy on the table. Same thing with automotive EVs. A lot of times the state of charge window, which is your range, is limited. But then as the manufacturer learns from that battery being deployed and used by the consumer, the next model, they can increase that state of charge window, which gives you more range. Or they can increase the state of charge window for the people that are already driving the EV. So the more intelligence you have in the control section of batteries, the more opportunity you have to drive more value in the future.
Yeah, that's logical. Makes sense.
Yeah. Scott, I want to add to your statement, like driving more value in the future. Like that intelligence to me is so core to unlocking the value. And like what is value in the future? I mean, for me, measurably, like my life and my focus is like dedicated around how do I reduce the most amount of carbon emissions, right? And to me, it's like a really reduction of, okay, there is a utility of new stuff and there's a reduction and there's a own battlefront about reducing or pairing as much solar and storage as possible on the new front. But instead of eliminating what these golf carts could do, right, which is 70% of their utility left, they're being recycled with 70% of the utility. We can find these niche applications now in which we can fill this market and add more value to the market, especially with the intelligence coming to our battery management systems and the controls associated with that data. So, I mean, there's so many battlefronts in all of this. I think that back to the point that Kevin was making, how do you not be all things to everyone? Like, I think with data, with intelligence, with our hardware, we can be very focused to adding value to this industry. And to me, ultimately, that is reducing carbon emissions.
Yeah. And I think primarily it stems from the fact that like it doesn't need to be a new site. It doesn't need to be something that degrades and you restart and you're able to integrate renewable energy again. It's about like being able to stay on top of the curve, staying current without needing to start over. And I think that that's going to actually relieve a lot of pressure from people who are trying to manage these assets and manage these sites and fulfill these PPAs, that they have a solution that takes that demon off their back. It's like, okay, I can stay current. I can stay on top of this without needing to start over, without needing to develop a new site and enter into a whole new agreement, etc. So, in essence, like I think that what we're trying to do here is just pave the way for easily adoptable solutions to increase sustainability and reduce carbon emissions. And I think that at the root basis for everything that we try to innovate, it stems from that. And I know that internally, every single one of us who works on this team is highly charged with that determination and that mindset. And all conversations revolve around that. It's one of the reasons why I'm so proud to be at BTE, trying to paint this story and talk to you guys about this, because I think it's a unique position to be able to have strong influence on a market that's so disparate and compliance heavy, that has such a strong pull on governments, etc. I think that being able to sort of start to change the general way that people think about energy, longevity, sustainability, what types of solutions actually reduce carbon emissions. Because renewable energy, without it being renewed to another space or without it being thought of in a longevity mindset, it's not sustainable. It's still renewable energy, but it's not sustainable. And I think those two things in conjunction is how you actually have the biggest impact on carbon emissions.
And just to add a little bit is that in my approach to things is that everybody wants to be more sustainable and do the right thing and be more green and reduce climate change. But the best way to motivate cultural change is through economic incentive. So when we drive value and we offer that transparency, that allows that value to be captured. The other thing that we provide, and we didn't touch on, is that our approach allows for people to improve their designs. They learn from the information that we can provide. So our customers can improve better products that last longer. So our approach and what we call it is circular AI, is that we continually learn from the assets that are deployed to improve the assets that are being designed in production.
So
Well,
who is your and very well said, guys. And I just personally totally appreciate the the mission, because I think we're all on the same mission, right? Around like pulling down carbon and reducing and making a more sustainable world. Who's the audience that you really feel like needs to hear the message of Black Teal Energy? If you could categorize that, who do you feel like you need to really speak to?
I'm gonna answer the question in a way you probably don't want me to, but I think everybody's the audience. We don't want to alienate out any stakeholder, because from the end users to all the people in the middle of the value chain, I think that everybody should be aware of how the industry can be changed and improved.
Mhm. Yeah, and I want to add to that like everybody should be the audience, because it's a fundamental philosophical approach to embracing renewable energy or sustainability. It's about designing for remanufacture, designing for disassembly, from the root basis of what putting pen to paper. The thought of the end of life should be there, and how to incorporate things throughout its degradation process, the awareness of battery degradation and usability at every single stage, etc. So I don't think that it's one person who needs to be hearing this. I think that it's a theological approach or a philosophical approach to a solution-oriented mindset.
It's
I
the
like-
cult.
What about from a business standpoint?
Yeah.
Like, because I mean, Mike still has his Walkman, and I know Mike was wondering if Black Teal Energy could help get just a little bit more life out of his 20-year-old lead acid batteries that he's got. Sorry, he has a Discman. He doesn't have a.
Oh, okay. I'll send him some AAAs.
He's upgraded.
I'm gonna sell those on eBay and get the last laugh, dude.
Yeah, from a business standpoint, I mean, yeah, philosophically, I think everyone could see the point of this, right? But I don't want to dive too far into, I know we're running out of time here, but very specifically, to me, the end customer that's holding the bag, that's owns that 20-year power purchase agreement, is our customer, because they're the ones going to deal with this at, when the warranty ends, they're still obligated to either the IOU or IPP or whatever for the next 15 years. And so they're the ones that really have to understand this message when they choose their manufacturer or their integrator or whoever, that they're the ones holding the bag of 20 years. Everyone else is only writing to 5. But if we can help their vendors write to 20-year contracts, like that would be the sweet spot.
Yeah.
So we are already seeing that, by the way. We're already starting to see developers starting to talk to their manufacturers about this compatibility and domestic content, but on the same vein, the influence is from developers, because they're the ones responsible for delivering kilowatt hours at the end of the day.
And ironically, that's the classic market pull, right? The end user asks their vendor, their suppliers, hey, I need something better.
Yeah.
Well, Derek, Scott, James, I'm awfully glad that you guys have combined to uniquely address this, because your understanding and articulation of the problems and the opportunities is impressive. I mean, you guys are deep thinkers on this really critical, and I'll even say emerging opportunity. And I'm obviously not a battery engineer. I don't know if you're able to figure that out during this conversation, but I learned a ton, and and I'm glad we had this conversation and I could learn more. But wow, well done.
Right. Well, hey, thank you guys so much. This has been a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys had fun. We learned a lot. My charge extended from this, my personal charge and capacity extended from this conversation. So I just want to thank Black Teal Energy.
I get to the end of these calls and I always find myself wishing I had studied harder, because I'm like, what the?
Awesome. Well, thanks again, guys. I'll circle back with you. What you do.
Right.
And actually, come to think of it, that phrase, if it was all done, it wouldn't be fun. We should use that.
Yeah, use it.
I gotta go. Thank you all. Take care.
Later, y'all. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Guys.
It's been fun. I'm all done.